Warm-up number 5. This is another basic warm-up. It's just your basic minor scale. We're just going to play it on the G and D string, 2-string position. This is warm-up number 7, and this is a diminished shape that we're going to tap a step and a half above the root. You're on your G string and your E string. We're going to start in the D position. We're going to travel down with it, travel back up, sliding in between changing positions. You can do a lot with bends. You can underbend, overbend. What's challenging for new players is to just bend up to a note that you can hear with your ear internally before you get there. So you need to start with practicing that. If you're an A and you're bending up to E on the G string, you need to get a feel for where that E is mentally, so you know exactly how much tension you need on the string, and you know you're going to go to E. You start there. So you do that by practicing hitting E. You know that's the sound of the note you want to get to. Okay, alternatively, once you've mastered that, you can underbend. So you get a half step out of it. So you want to go E flat. So and you can also pull off that half bend back down to your original note. And with a combination, you can say a lot. Another thing you want to think about is overbending too, just to have the strength to get past that note. So get a half step beyond your E to F. So now we're going to go to. So I went to E, I went to F, and I went to E flat. Okay, this is our most fundamental shape of the geometric shapes that we're going to explain to you. This first one being the block. And all it is a whole tone. It's 2 frets apart, basically a square. If we're in A, we'll start off 3-5 and 3-5 on the frets on the E and A string. So it's just. Okay, that is about as basic as you can get. And now we can move that up a whole step and get this. Then we can move laterally across the fretboard, up, and then one more time up to the E and B string at the 8th and 10th fret. So we've just tied a bunch of blocks together. Later on, we'll get into things we can add to it and take away from it to make it a little more interesting. But that's, 101 right there. Okay, this next shape is an elongated trap. Why do we call it that? Because we're extending the pinky another half step and creating kind of a super box shape. So in A, in A you'll get sort of a major effect from this, and this is 5/9, and then on the A string it's 5 and 7. So. Our next shape is an inverse elongated trap. We call it that because it's basically our elongated trap flipped around. So our anchor note will be B on the E string with our second finger. On the A string, you want your first finger on the 5th fret and pinky on the 9th. And you can hammer this or pick it. So it sounds like this. Okay, this is that same shape, same key, but this time we're just going to go laterally across the neck, straight down and straight back up. It's more of an exercise, but it has sort of a chromatic feel to it. But it can be incorporated into songs, but it's tricky to make it work. But as long as you emphasize the root, here's what it looks like. Okay, this again is that same shape. This is an alternate way to play it. We're going to go diagonal, which is a fret down and a string across. And of course at the G you got to compensate for the G. So we're going to go straight across at the G. So this will be what it looks like. So when we get to the G and then we skip to the B string, we don't drop a fret. So again, it's... Here's a short example on how you can put some blocks together. It's a little exercise that the chord pattern is A, G, C, and E. So it's... The shapes we'll use is the T1 shape in A, and over G it'll be the isosceles shape, the isosceles over C, and isosceles over E. And that's a real nice thing to try to practice harmonies against. You can do seconds and thirds and fifths and so forth. And if you have a way to do multi-tracking, try laying down that root and then doing all the little, the thirds. Practice doing thirds and fifths first off, and then you'll find that you can find some real exotic intervals, like seconds and fourths sometimes work in a real interesting way. But now we're going to try it, but we're going to play these shapes in each key in 3 different octaves. So it'll be something like, I'm sorry. Here's that same example, the T1 with the isosceles triangle exercise, but this time I want you to play it with a little bit different fingering sequence. So instead of playing it this way, let's start with the E and play it backwards. So everything gets picked that way. Okay, so okay, this is your standard block, very simple shape. You do the 1 3rd finger. Let's start this out in the A sharp position, and all this is a diagonal movement across the fretboard, down the fretboard, and when we skip from G to B, we're not going to descend a fret to compensate for the flatness of the G string. So. It's a very kind of jazzy, fusion-y kind of feel. I have no idea what it really is or how to use that, but if you play it, you'll sound really smart. Another thing to remember and consider when you're playing that scale and scales like that are sort of outside sounding is in getting that to come off right, what's really important is to try to alter the time signature a little bit. So you play behind the beat, ahead of the beat, and you give it a little bit of swing here and there. It's really a feel thing. That's one of those things some people have inherently and some people have to work on more than others. So again, if you just played it, it wouldn't have much flavor to it or much feel or anything. But if you has kind of a bebop-y, kind of a hop, skip, and jump to it. That's the way to do it. Okay, here's a little pattern example of how you can put half blocks and blocks together. It sounds kind of tricky, but it's very simple in the way it's constructed. So in the key of A, the 2nd fret, the shape is 2, 3, 5, which is a half, 2, 3, which is a half block, then skip up to the G string, and it's 2, 4, and 5. The trick of it is to Okay, check this out. This is, again, a very simple shape. It's it's a whole block. We're in A, whole block, half block. We're going to also hit the D note on the A string, so that's going to be our pivot note. That's what we're going to emphasize in our alternate picking. So you should be getting the upstroke on the D. That's what you want to really have pop. So that's your downbeat. Now, every 4 revolutions, we want to change to half block, whole block. So we just turn it upside down. So it'll be... All right, here's basically the same exercise with alternate picking involved, but this time this is sort of a combination of, everything's a combination of shapes, but our shape here is a half block. Then we got a step and a half, and we're going to incorporate a tap and a slide. And the sequences. This is a rectangle plus a square on top. It requires a little bit of dexterity. You may have to cut the webbing out between your fingers to make this happen. But you can do it with a tap, but as an exercise, just go ahead and try to do the stretch. It helps to pull your thumb back behind the neck a little bit. So. All right, this next example is chaos theory. It's crazy sounding, but relatively simple, though, when you break it down. On the B, it's in D, key of D. On the B string, which is where most of the action occurs, you're going to have a half block and a rectangle. First, second, pinky. Then we have what I call caps on the end. Caps meaning the adjacent string, you're going to hit that note that you have your finger on previously on that adjacent string. So the sequence will be... So it's 10 on the E string, You're all based on 10 here, so it's in the key of D. Your cap on the G string is 14. And then your shape on the B is half block, so that's 10, 11, and 14. So you start on 10 with your half block on the B string. Continuing on in chaos theory, one way to sound really chaotic is to use your bar bent back, tighten it up completely, where you get tension where the bar doesn't fall down. Just trill on the end of the bar. Use the leverage for the bar to get the bridge to vibrate like that, and the effect that that has on the note. And you can play a melody with it. For instance, that's all kinds of weird noise. Okay, continuing on in chaos theory, this is a shape that I used over a new song I'm working on called Diabolical, which is, I would play over E, the key of E, being a step and a half spread on either side of the 12th fret, first, second, and fourth finger. And it has some string skipping involved, but the pattern is... This is the descending part of that lick. And here's an extension of that same idea that I would play after the chromatic descending part. again, in the realm of chaos theory, this is what I call opposing chromatic lick. For our purposes, we'll start in D. One note goes up, another note goes down. We move the position up one fret and down one string. 3 different steps. So. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Perfect, okay. An alternative way to pick it is finger pick it. So. Close up. Another thing that I find myself unconsciously doing, but in doing the dojo, I sort of evaluated what I was doing and came up with figuring out that a lot of times I will take a position, let's say we're in C, and I've got one of my more basic patterns, which is something like this. Fairly standard, right? And what you would normally do, working within the scale, minor scale, would be, but instead of doing that, to make it a little more outside, I'll just continue with that pattern in a parallel fashion, straight down across the frets. But then again, ending up in my root notes so that it resolves. It's very simple, but it sounds strange, and people think you're a genius if you do that. Slow. Super fast. One way to get a nice flow in a solo is to have the shape that reoccurs over 3 octaves or more. It kind of gives this fluid motion to the solo and gets you from one area to another. I'll show you a shape now that I would use in, it can be used over E as well as other keys, but that's how you resolve it back to E. So. Expanding on that same idea, let's just move the top part of that shape up 1 fret. So instead of, we're going to go D sharp, D. So. What we've accomplished with this minor change is actually change the root from E to A. So I will resolve it in A after I do it. Okay, along the lines of this theme of a predetermined shape that we're going to play over octaves to create this kind of linear flow within a solo, Let's try something very traditional, very simple, with just a block whole tone shape. I'll show you how that can be used over a minor versus or a major scale, and in its relative minor application. So in A major, so you would have 5, 7, 9, moving up 7, 9, 11, 10, 12, 14. So. And here would be a relative minor application of that same shape in A. Okay, here's an alternative position to that same thing we just talked about. Here's another really common reoccurring shape that may be stating the obvious, but we should all be using. This is the whole tone, half tone shape. We can take that same shape and just drop that down a half step, and we'll end up in harmonic minor land. So that sounds like this. Which has a nice unresolved feel to it. We could add in that phrase, starting off the lick in A flat, and then just continuing down with the remainder of the licks.